This video is about racism and fame. I am an extremely quote-unquote woke person. I like that word. I like DEI. I like Black Lives Matter. I like the book White Fragility. I like the notion of communicating about race and understanding how big time race is in America. America is an extremely unique country when it concerns race and racial identity and being racially conscious and racism itself. I'm not going to go into depth about the books that I've read about these subjects or, the different types of, intellectual sort of arguments that you can make and point out systematic racism and point out people's own individual racism and how white people are very fragile and they don't like to talk about it because they don't want to seem like they're racists. But they are because they grew up in America. Anyway, over the weekend, we had the NFL draft. And Shadeur Sanders fell to the 5th round. Shadeur, of course, if you don't know about any of this shit, who cares, whatever. Just, you don't have to listen to it. But he's a quarterback for the Colorado Buffaloes, very high profile. Was supposed to go in the 1st round of the draft, but ended up going in the 5th. And a lot of African-American broadcasters on ESPN and other places have called this racism. Now, this is also is happening at the same time where television talking head and former Hall of Fame tight end Shannon Sharpe is being accused of sexual assault by a Instagram model or a OnlyFans model or whatever the hell they are. And a lot of the media, particularly with ESPN and other people I've seen online, are throwing the racism label at both of these things. Now, I'm all for doing that. I think there's a racial element to, virtually everything you see when it concerns certain types of media groups and certain types of things that happen in our society, right? The problem is this isn't racism. This is fame. You can call it fameism. This is people who are famous. I don't know if Shannon Sharpe is guilty or not. I have no idea. But he has had a history of questionable interactions with women. And it's because these women happen to be white that I'm watching a lot of smart African-American men online talk about how this is racism. And they're not really making a good case for it being racism because it isn't. It's fameism. These people are extraordinarily famous. If these were white athletes, they would be being treated the same exact way if they were at the same level of fame. Shannon Sharpe is on ESPN every day. He has his own podcast. He talks a lot of shit about a lot of stuff. To me, he's not that interesting. He's a former jock, so he thinks that every woman in the world wants to fuck him, and maybe he's right. Who the fuck knows? And athletes often don't hear the word no very much. This happened with Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger, who had interactions with the porn star Stormy Daniels, who had sex with Donald Trump, and he assaulted a woman in a bathroom, and it hurt Ben Roethlisberger's career. It hurt his endorsements. He was on the news about it all the time, and he was very outgoing when he first came in the league. And then once the sexual assault stuff came out, he kind of turned inward, if you will. He became less public. You didn't see him on commercials anymore. He wasn't the fun, guy anymore. He was famous because he was coming off a Super Bowl with the Steelers, and he saw what fame. When you get to a certain level of fame and you do something wrong, you are the lead story. The same people who applauded you for how great you were are the same people that are going to report about that this is what you did and maybe make comments on it or whatever. That's what's happening right now with Shannon Sharpe. It is not racism. It is that Shannon Sharpe, there's recordings of it. He was charged in 2010, I believe, or not charged, but he was accused of sexual assault in 2010 by another woman. Shannon doesn't hear the word no a lot. I don't think he's a predator. But we just got done with a period where we had decided that we were going to believe women. We weren't going to defend men, particularly famous men, who had committed sexual assaults or improprieties, and we were going to start supporting women, believe women. What was the famous hashtag after Weinstein, right? And this has been, it's been less because there has been some alterations of the way people are thinking, the rejection of woke ideology and DEI and things like that under the current administration has allowed a lot of white people to feel empowered to kind of be racist pricks. But that is not what's happening with Shannon Sharpe. And I'm not saying there aren't people online who are fucking assholes on Twitter, shit posters who say racist and horrible things. I've seen people make fun of people with physical disabilities, like the ableism thing. I see that shit all the time. Somebody will make fun of somebody with cerebral palsy because of the way they walk or the way they do something. I mean, I can't imagine what kind of a horrible person you'd have to be to post that, what kind of a shithead you'd have to be. And it's particularly with the racial stuff as well. So if you want to find incidences where people are being racist, you can find them. But this isn't an institutionally racist thing. This isn't Shannon Sharpe is being targeted because he's black or because or they're using words like, destroying. I watched this guy talk like he's a black guy, very smart. I think he's a lawyer, and he's talking the biggest shit about this, and he's making no sense. Oh, they always use when a black man is accusing, when a white woman accuses a black man, they always use terms like, Shannon Sharpe's a big, powerful black man who's going to destroy my career, which the woman in 2010 said of him, or whenever it was. And he somehow had created this look, racism is everywhere. And when it's racist, you should point it out. This isn't racist. This is fame. Shannon Sharpe is an extremely famous person, and he has been delving into all of the Puff Daddy and the Cat Williams bullshit and the Monique bullshit. They get on the podcast, Cat Williams gets on a podcast and tells everybody that Hollywood's full of a bunch of Satanists and that there's only one black person allowed at any one time in Hollywood. I mean, Cat Williams I'm not a big Cat Williams fan. I think he's a fine stand-up, but Cat Williams might have some mental issues that are being encouraged by all of these podcasts that allow him to come on and just say whatever the fuck he wants to say with no proof or evidence of it. And I don't listen to all of it because I don't like all that gossip shit. I hate celebrity. I think we're in 2025, the manufacturing of celebrity has just gotten, I'm too old. I don't care about it anymore. I don't like it. And so, and then nepotism and all that crap. But Shannon Sharpe is not being treated unfairly by anybody. In fact, he's being given the benefit of the doubt. And he came out and did a press conference, but a video saying that these were completely false, that they were trying to steal money. And yes, that he had offered $10 million to her because she wanted 50, and he offered 10 million just to have it go away. But he's not guilty at all. And Shannon Sharpe probably has $100 million. I would assume that with all of his investments and the money he's made over the last 10 years off the field, plus what he made on the field, he's probably in that ballpark, right? $50 to $100 million, like in his bank account. He has plenty of money to fight this. He has plenty of money to do a PR campaign, to do and he tried to settle it, which doesn't mean you're guilty. It means you just tried to settle it. It's just easier to pay the speeding ticket sometimes than it is to go in front of court and deal. But we don't know that he's innocent. We don't know that until, this woman, it's a civil trial. It's not a criminal trial. I always wonder why these accusers don't call the police. I know that when you get into sexual assault charges or you get into stuff like that, you start getting into rape talk, you start getting into things that are, that maybe you'd be embarrassed, maybe you don't want to go deal with as a woman, maybe you don't want to be treated like that, maybe you don't want to be not believed, maybe you don't want the hassle. But then to sue an OnlyFans model who's she's probably worth millions as well, to not have contacted the police department and gotten a rape kit done, or just even made a statement to the police and had them file a police report, even if no one was ever charged for anything. I would prefer that because then we wouldn't have to worry about all this credibility bullshit with women. We don't believe her. She's targeting because she's white and he's black. And all. That's not what happened here. If she's targeting of him for any reasons because he's rich and famous, and she can, and comparing it to Deshaun Watson and comparing it to some of the other stuff that's happened, it's the same lawyer that handled most of the women that went after Deshaun Watson, Tony Busby, I think is his name, And he's been around for a long time. He's kind of one of those well-known media lawyers types. But this also, and that's what I think about Shannon Sharpe. The Shadeur Sanders thing is the same way. You're hearing people talk about how Shadeur Sanders fell to the 5th round because he's black. Meanwhile, the number 1 overall pick was Cam Ward, an African-American. I don't, and the 2 Super Bowl quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, both black. The league MVP, 2-time league MVP, Lamar Jackson, black. We can just keep going and going and going. It's not even hard to do. And I don't think there's racism with Shadeur. I think it was fameism. I think it was the same thing as why Tim Tebow didn't last more than 3 seasons in the NFL. He couldn't even get a role as a backup because he's so famous that every time something goes wrong, the media goes right to him and asks questions. They're talking to a backup or a 3rd-string quarterback and asking them what they think of the offense and maybe would they like a chance at this? As soon as the Browns starting quarterback struggles, they're going to be asking for Shadeur to come in. And so a lot of teams simply don't want that smoke. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders was his dad, and it was his agent. I guess Shiloh, his other son, was projected as sort of maybe a 5th-round pick, somewhere in that area, 6th-rounder. He didn't get drafted either, and he signed with Drew Rosenhaus, who's a famous agent. Anyway, but a lot of this had to do with Deion's mishandling of the information that he was being given. A lot of this had to do with too much fame for his son, for his talent level. His son is not an exceptional athlete, doesn't have a great arm, is not a good athlete, an NFL athlete. He's just not. And he's only had one coach his entire life, and that's been his father. Nobody's ever seen any of this. No one really knows how to process a lot of this. And frankly, his tape, his numbers look really good. His tape sometimes doesn't match his numbers. He takes a lot of sacks. If you take a sack instead of throwing an incompletion, it doesn't hurt your QBR, your QB rating, doesn't hurt your completion percentage. Your numbers stay just as high. If you throw an incompletion, that's a mark against your percentage, your completion percentage. So a lot of it is a lot of screen passes and crossers and things that are easy for a quarterback to see and hit and get easy, cheap numbers. And Shadeur's tough. It's tough as hell. Anybody that plays college football or professional football are tough as hell. It's the most physical, brutally violent sport, humbling sport there is. People always say it's baseball. No one's hitting you in baseball. No 280-pound guy who runs a 4.5 40 is hitting you from behind in baseball. I know it's humbling not to be able to hit a baseball, but it's not quite as humbling as having, literally 1 minute you're standing, the next minute your helmet is in like an inch of dirt and you're tasting dirt in your mouth. That's humbling. But this is not racism. This is fameism, for lack of a better word. And I think I'm not one of those people who's like, when you say it's racism, you're the boy who cried wolf. None of that shit. What I am saying, though, is that when you are so famous that you transcend the sport or whatever, just let's talk about sports in general. And Shannon Sharpe his fame had transcended football. He is now a podcaster. He's now on ESPN. He's an analyst. Shadeur Sanders, his fame has exceeded his football. He's on television commercials. He was making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in NIL money, which is name, image, likeness. He's a social media, he's got social media, like millions of followers. So when you transcend the sport to that level, it becomes about fame, not race. Now, is he a black man? Sure. But he didn't fall in the draft because he's black. He fell in the draft because most of the teams don't want the headache and the smoke and the hassle of dealing with a Sanders, particularly with Shadeur. And Shadeur's a bit of a prick. He fucked his interviews up. He didn't take the process seriously because everyone kept telling him he was going to be such a high draft pick. So when you hear these commenters talk about race, and they're black, and they probably know more than I do about it. I'm not arguing any of that. I'm just saying not everything is racism. And when you start to say that everything is racism, then you kind of lose the forest for the trees, or the trees through the forest, whatever the fuck it is. And you're kind of being very honest with yourself. When this is about fame, this is about social media, this is about, things that are bigger than even race. It's about celebrity. So thank you for listening, and